What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another edition of Pistons Daily, where you can find daily content covering all things Detroit Pistons, Monday through Friday. I'm your host. My name is Kyle Garrison. You can find me over on Twitter at Kyle Garrison, where I talk all things Detroit sports. So head over there, give me comments, questions, concerns, episode ideas. I'd love to hear from all you guys. Also, shout out to everyone who tunes in every single day. The channel is growing at an unbelievable rate, and it is all thanks to you guys. So once again, I really appreciate it. But with that being said, let's jump right into today's video. So I like to just scroll through different articles, kind of see what other people are saying, what Pistons beat writers, what national media writers are talking about with the Pistons. And I saw Tony Branyan over at Last Word on Sports. He wrote an article, and the title really popped out to me. It said, "Pistons taking built, not bought approach." And I don't want to discuss the article, the actual content of the article, but rather just the fact that this is great. This is a good thing. The Pistons are getting national media attention for what they're doing in the offseason. And it's not because they went out and made a Kevin Durant splash or they went and did, some insane move like getting Desmond Bane like the Magic did. But more so, people are recognizing that, they're amassing their young talent and they've had so many of these top 5 picks over the last 6 years. They're letting them develop together. And all of these things coming together are a good thing. This is good. The Pistons traditionally in the past haven't been a huge free agency destination or a team that's going to go and make these crazy trades, either at the deadline or during the offseason. They're more of a team that is going to bank on their young talent and bank on their draft picks turning out how they know they can. And this team is doing exactly that. Tom Gors, from top to bottom, to Trajan Langdon, to JB Bickerstaff, to the assistant coaches, they realize that this team has a ton of young talent, a ton of potential that's untapped. There's so many different skills that these players possess that the Pistons really haven't even cracked into yet. I mean, you look at a guy like Ron Holland, who last year was a rookie and he was 19 years old and he was thrown into the fire. And you look at a guy like Asar Thompson, who was also kind of thrown into the fire in the middle of the year last year, and they just picked it up as they went on. And those are type of attributes you just can't teach. You can't teach that adaptability, the ability to just come in at any moment and make an impact on the game. And that is what this Pistons organization has really built itself on over the last 5 years. And that's why they were able to win their first playoff game since 2008. So I think that, for anyone who is a little bit skeptical about what the Pistons' plan is or was this offseason, just know Malik Beasley threw a huge wrench into everything. And for what happened for kind of short notice with that situation, they did exactly what they needed to do. And instead of looking at it as an underwhelming offseason and the Pistons haven't really gone and made additions, think about it as they're developing a young core. They're letting Ron Holland and Asar Thompson develop offensive skills that complement one another. They're allowing Cade Cunningham and Jaden Ivey to develop as a backcourt duo. They're allowing Cade Cunningham and Jalen Duren to get that lob threat connection that they had this past year and allowing them to develop that and make that more effective. In the playoffs, the Knicks did a good job of taking that away. And so you allow them to get another year under their belt instead of, we're going to have to extend Jalen Duren. Let's go out and get somebody cheaper. Let's go out and replace him or make a big splash and go out and get a more proven veteran center. No, you're allowing Jalen Duren to untap into those skills he has. And that's just what is going to bring this team to the promised land. This is what's going to bring this team to Eastern Conference championships and NBA championships like they were in the late 90s or in the early 90s and in the early 2000s. So there's a lot to look at overall, but at the end of the day, we just have to reassure ourselves that the Pistons are doing what they need to do to be successful in the long run. And I think every single year they're just going to get better, not because of the additions they made in free agency or in the trade market, but rather the additional skills that we see guys like Jaden Ivey and Cade Cunningham and Jalen Duren and this young core. The strides that we see them take are going to be indicative of what this team's ceiling is going forward. So let me know what you guys think about the Pistons offseason so far, if you think it was a little underwhelming or if you like the built not bought approach. But again, let's just be patient and let's trust the front office until proven otherwise. Until they have given us a reason not to trust their goals and their plans, then I think we should just have some trust, have some faith that they're going to bring this team to the promised land and to where we know they can be going forward. But moving on, I know I just talked about Ron Holland, but I wanted to continue talking about him. There was another article that I saw from Jeremy Woo. I believe it was over ESPN, and it was the most interesting sophomores to watch for the 2026 season. And initially when I saw that, I go, oh, where's Ron Holland ranked, right? Obviously, they talked about him as one of the biggest trade chips on the market, like I talked about in a video a couple days ago. But for some reason, they don't have Ron Holland in the most intriguing sophomores this year. And whatever, it's not the best. It doesn't say the best in the most proven sophomores going into the 2025-2026 season. It's the most interesting. So it's a subjective opinion. I'll just read off some of the players they have on here. Number 10, Nikola Topic of the Thunder. Jared McCain, 9. 8, Jalen Wells. 7, Kel'el Ware. 6, Alex Sarr. 5, Donovan Clingan. 4, Matas Buzelis. 3, Zachariah Risachet. 2, Stefan Castle, and then 1, surprisingly, Reed Shepherd. I'm not as high on Reed Shepherd, I think, as other people are. But nonetheless, he is number 1 there. And Ron Holland is not on here overall. And again, like I said, I'm not going to get mad or get upset that Ron Holland is not on the most, impactful or interesting sophomores going forward. It's just, it's a ranking list. But I think it's interesting to look at a guy like Nikola Topic for the Thunder. He might not even get consistent rotational minutes next year. Ron Holland, I expect him to get 25 minutes a night. I expect him to have a huge role on one of the better teams in the Eastern Conference next year. I expect him to take a huge leap on the defensive end of the floor as a point of attack defender. The offensive game, I don't know if it'll be as big of a leap as we'll see on the defensive end, but it'll be significant. There will be areas of the game that Ron Holland improves on the offensive end of the floor. And last year, he was great. As a 19-year-old rookie for a team that was really finding their stride, he was trying to figure out where he really fit in. And as a guy who was a non-shooter, he did a great job of saying, well, look, I am an incredible finisher at the rim. I'm going to make that where I can thrive and where I can get consistent minutes. And that's what he did. And he was able to play as a rookie. So I think overall, maybe it's not the most interesting just because he might be more of a rotational piece than some of these guys. Like I think, Stefan Castle is going to have a huge role for the Spurs, and Zachariah Risachet is going to start for the Hawks, and Matas Buzelis is also going to have a huge role for the Bulls. So I get that. But I also, just because he's not starting and just because his team's a little bit better doesn't mean that he's not going to be intriguing or he's not going to have a huge leap. I do think that when you look at guys like Jalen Duren and Asar Thompson and some of the leaps that they made from year 3 or year 2 to year 3, from year 3 to year 4, it gets lost on us that Ron Holland is going to have that improvement as well. Last year was his rookie year. It was year 1 and he's going into year 2 now. And he has that room for improvement, and it's coming together. We watched it in the Summer League. We've heard about it from Trajan Langdon, from JB Bickerstaff. Other players have talked about it as well. People are excited for what Ron Holland's going to bring to the table this year, and I think it's just odd that he wasn't in the most interesting players or sophomores heading into the season because, again, I do think he's very intriguing as a prospect overall, and I think he's going to turn some heads this year. And also, I do think he has one of the better chances to be the best player in that draft class. I think that there's a lot of players that could take that spot going forward. Alex Sarr is really good. Zachariah Risachet, really good. Stefan Castle. But Ron Holland is just as good as those guys. He had a little bit more of a limited role than Alex Sarr or Zachariah Risachet did for the Hawks last year. But again, he's going to make some strides, and I think that there's a lot to be excited about going forward with Ron Holland. Again, efficiency at the rim is something that is very, very important for young players to develop. And Ron Holland, unless there's a huge fall off in his sophomore year, showed us his rookie year that that's consistent. That's consistently very, very good. And I'm excited to kind of see how he is able to add that to a part of his bag, as well as a better handle, better court vision, better decision-making skills, and kind of just overall what he can do to improve his stock and bring value to this team. But moving forward, I know it's just it's an off-season content that these beat writers and these national media outlets are producing, and I'll keep talking about them, but there's not too much weight to it. I just think it's interesting to see what national media and what different opinions have to say about the Pistons. So I wanted to touch on that and just give my thoughts overall on the fact that Ron Holland, he's going to have a year. I've talked about it a million times on here. He's poised to have a very, very, very impactful season this year. So very excited for that. But moving on, the NBA.com, not Bleacher Report, they released a top 10 players in the East heading into the 2025-2026 season. This was Sean Powell. He released this article, and I wanted to just go through and read everybody. One, obviously, Giannis Antetokounmpo. I don't think that's really a debate. Number 2, they've got Jalen Brunson. Number 3, Donovan Mitchell. 4, Paolo Banchero. Then at 5, Cade Cunningham. 6, Joel Embiid, which I'm not sure about that. 7, Evan Mobley. 8, Jaylen Brown. 9, Karl Anthony Towns. And 10, Trae Young. The only reason I say Joel Embiid is I'm still so concerned about his injuries going forward. And I do think that Evan Mobley right now is a better player overall than Joel Embiid. It's just those injuries he had are really hard to come back to where he was 2 years ago. But again, Joel Embiid's still a great player overall, but Cade is ahead of him, and Joel Embiid won an MVP 2 seasons ago. So speaks it speaks volume to what Cade Cunningham's, what people's opinion of Cade Cunningham is around the NBA. So I think it's very cool to see him at Cade, but I don't know. I kind of, I'm going to push the narrative that he's better than the 5th best player in the East. I think he's better than Paolo Banchero. He has more of an impact on his team winning. He's a more dynamic scorer than Paolo Banchero. He's less one-dimensional. He doesn't rely as heavily on free throws and just attacking the rim and overall size, which is still a skill in itself, and it's still very valuable for Paolo. He's still a great player. But Cade's a better playmaker, and overall, I know this doesn't really, this isn't Paolo Banchero's fault or Cade's fault, but Cade doesn't need a Franz Wagner caliber player to lead a winning team. They were better than the Magic last year, and they were a higher seed, and I think that they will be again this year. I think that the Pistons have a really good shot of being right around there with the Magic, but they added another guy who if the Desmond Bane was on the Pistons right now, I think there's a lot of people who would say he's the 2nd best player. And I think that they probably be right. And maybe you make a case for Asar Thompson, but it's different, right? Desmond Bane's much more of an offensive-minded player. And so I think that Paolo Banchero has the right resources around him that make him really good. And he's still, if he didn't have Franz Wagner and Desmond Bane, he'd still be a very good player, no doubt in my mind. But Cade Cunningham, the way he affects winning, the way he impacts this team, the way he makes his teammates better, I just think he's better. I just think that he's a more talented player overall than Paolo Banchero. And I don't think that's really a hot take at all. I think that just because Cade isn't as flashy, he doesn't get that treatment that guys like Anthony Edwards and Paolo Banchero do, because you can post their dunks on ESPN, and then you got your casual fans who are impressed with, jumping out of the gym, which is still, it's cool. It's cool to watch, but the things that Cade does and watching the way that he flows within an offense and the way he makes his teammates better, like I mentioned, Paolo Banchero doesn't bring that to the table for the Magic. He just simply doesn't. So again, whatever. It's a preseason ranking list. I'm not going to get too worked up about it, but I do think that Cade Cunningham has a case to be the 4th best player in the East. When you're looking at Donovan Mitchell and Jalen Brunson, again, there's a case. There's a case you can make that Cade's better. You look at both those players, and they're more proven, 100%. They have more playoff experience. They've won more playoff series. They've done just more overall impactful things in the league, and I can respect that. And I definitely think that those two guys are unbelievable players overall. But Cade in a year is going to be a better player than both of them. And I don't think that's a hot take at all. I think he's got a higher ceiling offensively than either of them had ever in their career. He's a better playmaker than both of them ever have been in their career by a decent margin, I would say. I think he's a much better playmaker than Jalen Brunson and Donovan Mitchell. And I don't think there's really arguing that. But again, like I said, very, very good players. Both of those guys are unbelievable. Jalen Brunson gave the Pistons fits. Asar Thompson, who I think is one of the best defenders in the league, was struggling at times to guard Jalen Brunson. So I'm not taking away from anything from him, but I do think that Cade is the 2nd best player in the Eastern Conference, and we're going to start talking about him as the best player as Giannis Antetokounmpo starts to or as his best basketball is most likely behind him. Cade's going to kind of start taking that over throughout the Eastern Conference, and I think that'll be consensus. I think it'll be him, Paolo, Evan Mobley, and then you'll have guys like Jalen Brunson, who will start getting a little bit older but still play at a very high level. So overall, They have him at 5. They have Cade Cunningham at 5. I'd have him all the way up from 2 to around 5. So I'm not too mad about it. I think that's a fair ranking overall. But again, I do think that there's a case you can make for Cade over Paolo Banchero, Donovan Mitchell, and Jalen Brunson. But let me know what you guys think. Is Cade the 5th best player in the Eastern Conference? Do you think he's too high, too low, or just where overall would you rank him amongst the Eastern Conference players heading into 2025? Again, I do think Giannis is still the best, unanimous best player in the Eastern Conference, but over the years, I think Cade Cunningham is going to start to climb those rankings and hopefully end up taking that spot. But last thing before we wrap things up is I've talked about pretty much everybody in the organization except for Tom Gors. And it's his 61st birthday today, so I figured I might as well do a quick little segment on him and what he's done. So in 2011, he took over the team. He bought a 51% stake in the team, and it's since been upgraded to a 100% stake. I'm not sure what year that was. I'm assuming it was pretty soon after 2011. But he took over for the late Bill Davidson after he passed away. And then prior to that, it was Fred Zollner, who was the owner. And Tom Gors is just the 3rd Pistons owner. And I will say, I think his tenure has been disappointing, to say the least. I think that you guys can all pretty much consensusly agree on that. It hasn't been great. It's been underwhelming. It seems like he has been a little cheap. Not a little cheap, actually. It seems like he's been very cheap in the past. And then there's times where he isn't cheap and he goes out and does things like hire Monty Williams, and you're just thinking, what in the world could you possibly be doing? But then he makes moves like going and getting JB Bickerstaff and getting Trajan Langdon. And I think overall, we're going to continue to criticize ownership. That's just what we do as sports fans. But the fact that I think he realized, it took him 14 years, but he realized that he needed a better basketball mind to be the president of basketball operations. He needed a guy like Trajan Langdon to come in and run the show. It was never going to be Tom Gors running the show. I think he was trying to micromanage, management in the past, like we've talked about with Troy Weaver, for example. And I think that as Tom Gors has started to take more of a backseat role, it's allowed for, Trajan Langdon to just utilize his basketball mind and make the right decisions that are going to enhance this team going forward. So, again, it's super easy to criticize ownership, and the Pistons fan base has had every right to question Tom Gors' decision-making over the past 14 years. But right now, it's time to give credit where credit's due, and the fact that he's behind the scenes now and not really making decisions and kind of allowing other people to run the show, who knew? Things are a lot better. So I'm glad that he's at least realized that and kind of come to the conclusion that there might be people who know just a little bit more than him. And that's, you need to have ownership and management who are self-deprecating and can objectively look at situations without, getting nervous about being proven wrong or having somebody who might be a little bit smarter than them in different areas. So again, if you guys in this podcast, if there's different things in the comments where I mess up or you disagree with me, let me know. I love that discourse and give me comments because, again, it's similar to like a Tom Gors, like I said, being able to identify when you make mistakes and when you might be wrong about something is important in learning and growing in whatever you're doing. And Tom Gors has really embodied that the past year, and he's got to continue to do that. But I think if he continues to, Pistons fans will be a little less hard on him and realize that at the end of the day, he's trying to do whatever it takes to make this team a championship contender again. And if that was bringing in Trajan Langdon, then that's a great addition. So I like overall just what he's been able to do the past year. He's not trying to make his own decisions or try and do what he thinks is right. Rather, he's kind of passed the torch over, and I think that's what's going to be beneficial going forward to get back to where they were, like I said, in the early 90s, in the early 2000s. But let me know in the comments or over on Twitter your overall thoughts on Tom Gors. If you think the decisions he's recently made give you more confidence, or if you're still skeptical that he can maintain that success. But that's all I've got for you guys today. Let me know in the comments or over on Twitter your thoughts on the job, again, that Tom Gors has done. If you think that Ron Holland is poised to make a big sophomore leap this year. And also if you think Cade is a top 5 player in the Eastern Conference. As always, like, subscribe, comment, turn on post notifications, and follow me on Twitter at Kyle Garrison 2. Also, head over to Spotify, leave a 5-star review if you can. That would be much appreciated. And once again, thank you all so much for tuning in every single day. With that being said, that is going to do it here for episode 35 of Pistons Daily, and I will catch you all next time.